Happy Thursday. Welcome into Willard and Dibs. No FP today. He's on his way to Cincinnati to get ready for Reds and Giants beginning tomorrow. So it's just Dibs and I in for Mark Willard. It's Mark Grandi with you alongside Dan Dibley here on 95.7 The Game. Willard will be back next week as we inch towards the weekend. We got a lot to get into today. Dibs, it's a beautiful Thursday. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I apologize to anyone who was, offended by the spoiler alert conversation, but for me, Mark, in this era in which we live, you guys are. I got my live mics in there. Carter, live mics. Somebody needs to shut it down in there. Thank you. I remember my first time. Lucas Alexander, director of Jorts, apparently. Yeah, I'm hearing it. So
I think they're just talking only into your ears. Is what's going on?
That's
I don't hear anything.
Okay, whatever. It's talk back. Wild things are happening, but spoiler alert wise. Nowadays, when everything happens and it immediately is here, there, and everywhere, it becomes a you problem on spoiler alerts. That's all
I don't disagree. Evan wasn't in the wrong for saying that Simone Biles won the all-around gold.
Oh, you said it again.
Said it again. Sorry, Paul. I didn't watch it live, Dibs, but I'm gonna turn it on primetime tonight and watch it. Even though I know how it ends, I'm sure it's still gonna be thrilling to watch it.
Exactly.
And she's one of the greatest champions in sports history, considering what she's doing. So it's still worth watching, even if you got spoiled and you're unhappy that it got spoiled. But I would still suggest tuning in. We got a lot to get to today, though, Dibs. We have football today.
Oh, I can't
Football
wait.
is back. The Hall of Fame game, Bears and Texans. That kicks off later on today. We're not going to talk about the Hall of Fame game, maybe other than get a Dibs lock of the day, and then Lucas and I will pick the other side. We'll see.
Now, bet the under is the lock, and
Okay.
Guru mentioned it during their show, and I talk about it every year, and every year when the line comes out, whatever the line is, and I know that this year it's 36, I think, or 36 and a half. Not a very big number. I think it's 36 and a half, they were saying, and I do think that the smart play is always to bet the under, and I know that last year it did go over, so could be another one where you want to fade the dibber, and you guys can go ahead and fade me and bet the over all you want. I'm not doing a lot of sports betting right now, but if I was to bet it, I would definitely bet the under.
I'm seeing 31 and a half.
31
Does that change your opinion? 31 and a half.
That's a small number.
Bet the over?
I'd still bet the under.
All right. That makes it easier for me. Then I might just take the over.
You won't.
And we'll see how it plays out. I haven't locked it in yet, but we'll see. Maybe I'll do that before it kicks off a little bit later. Let's talk about some football, though. Not the Hall of Fame game. Not Bears versus Texans. I'm sure we're not going to see many, if any, starters. Caleb Williams not going to play, the number one overall pick for the Bears. I don't think C.J. Stroud, the quarterback for the Texans, is going to play. But we got a lot of things we can get into related to the Niners, Dibs, as training camp continues, although the team is off today. No practice today, which means we won't get, at the very least, another Brandon Aiyuk sighting, dapping up John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. But let's start with something we just got into briefly on the crossover with Evan and Guru, talking about Trent Williams and his hold out, Brandon Aiyuk and his hold in. I know you felt relatively strongly that was a celebratory high five and pat on the bat from Kyle Shanahan to Brandon Aiyuk yesterday. As of this moment, we don't have any news to report. There is no extension signed, sealed, delivered just yet. Maybe we do get some of that news coming out right now. But Dibs, I can only guess here based on how you feel about Trent Williams' absence. Are you more concerned by Brandon Aiyuk's absence or his hold in, lack of a new deal just yet? Or are you more concerned by Trent Williams' hold out? Which one concerns you more at this stage?
Neither, but if I was to really put an assignment to either one, I would say that I'm more concerned about Brandon Aiyuk by about 0.1% because, Brandon Aiyuk has a certain amount of rhythm that needs to be reestablished with Brock Purdy. And Purdy's been in camp, and he's been throwing to Debo and Pearsall and Cowing and all the rest of the guys, Taylor and the rest of the receivers. So it'd be nice to get him into that rhythm with Brandon Aiyuk. But again, I don't know if you look at the preseason games, how many of those games that Brandon Aiyuk will play, how much will Brock play? I know Brock likes to be out there and compete and get hit. So I would imagine Brock probably gets at least one series in the opener, and maybe he gets a quarter and a half in the second game, and then game 3, he shuts it down. Game 3 used to be the big dress rehearsal, but now without 4 games, game 2 is kind of the one where you want to have your starters go out there and actually play some. So I do think that Brandon Aiyuk is going to play a little bit in the opener, more in game 2. So if he's going to play more in game 2, that's where I would want Brandon Aiyuk to at least be out there and play a quarter, half a quarter, whatever it is. And so that to me is kind of what I'm targeting as far as his return. For Trent Williams, doesn't matter. Who cares? If you don't play at all until the opener, that doesn't, I think, matter at all to their offense. But I would like Aiyuk to get a little bit of time. So in terms of who do I want back sooner, it would be Brandon Aiyuk. And I hope that contract gets announced here in the next 3 hours and 52 minutes.
That would be nice. Well, preferably before 3 hours and 52 minutes from now.
Exactly.
Maybe an hour from now.
That'd
hour
be
and a half from now.
That's
2
perfect.
hours from now.
We can slot
something
that
like
in.
that. Hope it works out. And I get exactly what you're saying in terms of who needs the training camp reps, the preseason reps to feel like they are as prepared as possible going into the regular season. I think with you, I would agree. It's Brandon Aiyuk. He's younger. He's at a position where you got to go against, live cornerbacks and live defensive backs and all of that and get used to the contact. And maybe for a certain degree, you need that for offensive linemen as well, but maybe not as much for someone like Trent Williams, who has been the best offensive lineman in the NFL for like almost a decade running now. He's been incredible for the vast majority of his career, even though it was interrupted by a fight against cancer and all that. And we know all of that. He's been incredible. And so I get what you're saying. But I think when you look at what's most important to the 49ers offense, Dibs, and this is not a knock on Brandon Aiyuk, it's nothing against his ability, an all-pro last year. He was awesome last year. I think it's by far the most important player on this 49er offense, at least compared to each other. When you compare Aiyuk to Trent Williams, it's Trent Williams, and it's not even close. And as Guru brought up, Mike Silver of the Chronicle alluded to, the Niners have known about Trent Williams' desire to get a reworked deal for a long time now, for months, and nothing has been worked out just yet. Up until this point, the negotiations have been fully private. Not that anybody is negotiating in public now, just the public knows that he's not happy with his current contract and he's not at training camp. Aiyuk has kind of been negotiating publicly this entire offseason, but now the public does know about Trent Williams' absence. But we found out that the Niners have known about his desire to get a new deal reworked for a really long time, and nothing has happened yet. And that is arguably the most important piece of your offense, and he's not at training camp just yet, and you're entering a do-or-die season, and he's not showing up. And I get it's just the 1st of August, and you have more than an entire month until you play a regular season football game for the first time this year, but that to me is more concerning. You also add on the fact that he's likely wanting to be paid the most of any offensive lineman ever, and Tristan Wirfs just broke the bank and set a new record, 5 years, $140 million. Aiyuk obviously wants to be near the top, but he's not getting the most money that any wide receiver has ever gotten. He's going to slot in somewhere between, I don't know, 3rd to 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th most all time. Trent Williams is looking for the most ever, and the 49ers finances are such that might not be the easiest thing to fit in. So I think all that considered, for me, Trent Williams is a bigger worry, a bigger concern for me as a Niner fan than Brandon Aiyuk.
Do we know that he wants the biggest contract in history, or is that something that we're all just assuming because he's the best tackle in football? I look at a player who is, 36, 37, a guy who's, looking it up right now, and as you look at where they are in his career, I don't think that he's looking to...
Just turned 36 a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, he's 36, so he's not looking for a 4-year deal. He's not looking to tear up his deal and get 4 years and be a tackle till he's 40. What I do think he's looking for is guaranteed money. So you could look at the Tristan Wirfs contract and say, wow, he's making 28.1 average annual. Does Trent want that? Well, he probably wants something close to that, but more importantly, he wants guaranteed money because right now, on his deal, he has $0 guaranteed. So if you're Trent, you're not worried about Tristan Wirfs, who's 35 years old, or 25 years old, rather. You're looking for a deal that gives you guaranteed money this year, maybe guaranteed money next year, and then after that, we'll see what happens. And that's where I do think it's a little bit different. And yes, I think that the team and Trent have known long ago that he wants something else, but all these things happen in time. And McCaffrey, he wants more money. Okay, that's a much easier deal. That money's a lot less. And the Brandon Aiyuk deal is a much bigger number, total number, than what they're going to give Trent Williams. So for Trent,
but per year, not necessarily.
No, but it's not about per year. It's about the overall money, and it's about how much do you have to give Brandon Aiyuk up front. And then you get to Trent, and if Trent's making, 23 average annual, and he wants to get that fully guaranteed, well, then maybe you give him 30 this year, fully guaranteed this year, and then next year it's 17.5, or next year is 20 fully guaranteed, and then after that you get into voidable years and you get into money that he may or may not recoup. But for the Niners, it's probably more important to figure out the Aiyuk deal first, because that overall number is much bigger than Trent Williams. And the thing that makes me not worry is, have we heard one report or one hint of the fines that Trent Williams is accruing?
No, we haven't.
By holding out? Because by holding out, and he's under contract, wouldn't he be liable?
He's subject to fines.
Exactly. But we've heard not even a whisper of anything.
I'm trying to remember when they didn't fine Bosa last year, right?
Right.
Or at least at the very end, they paid him back, whatever it was, or they just I don't think it happens like on a daily basis or even a weekly basis. It might happen like at the end. They just decide at the very end to waive it all, or whatever the case is. Going back to Debo. Did they find Debo? I don't think they find Debo either, right?
Don't think so.
I don't think they find any one of these recent holdouts.
But they can. And
they can if they want.
I think that if you're in a fifth-year option mode, that the team is allowed, based on the CBA, to immediately recuse or excuse, rather, those fines. And they don't have to rack those fines up. But here we are with Trent Williams, and he's clearly holding out. And we're now, week 2 of training camp, and yet I haven't even heard a whisper of, if Trent sits out another day, it's going to be $340,000 or whatever the number would be. So I'm not worried at all about whether or not he's going to come in when he needs to come in.
888-957-9570. We are, I think, the 7 practice days into training camp for the 49ers. What worries you more right now? Is it Brandon Aiyuk holding in? No sign of a deal just yet, although maybe there's some positive developments given the handshake and the daps between Aiyuk and Lynch and Shanahan yesterday. If you haven't seen it, just search Aiyuk on Twitter and the video will pop up. But 888-957-9570. What worries you more right now? Is it Trent Williams or is it Brandon Aiyuk? From the 415 on the Xfinity mobile text line, no, from San Francisco, he says, if you watch successful Niner run plays, you will see Aiyuk downfield effectively mirroring what Williams is doing at the line of scrimmage. And there's no doubt, no, and thanks for the text, Aiyuk is still incredibly valuable to this 49er team, but you look at what else you have offensively. You got Deebo Samuel, and you've got George Kittle, and you've got Christian McCaffrey, and you've got Jawan Jennings, and now you got Ricky Pearsall, who, by the way, has been playing well since getting cleared and ready to practice. And we'll talk to Larry Krueger coming up in a couple of hours, who's all over that. And I'm sure he will have something positive to say about Ricky Pearsall. There's no doubt, no, that Aiyuk is still incredibly important to this Niner offense. But if you were to point out an area of weakness and an area where you're concerned about the 49ers, it might be offensive line, because you've already got a couple of other injuries and absences on the offensive line. Spencer Burford is dealing with a broken hand. The team is still determining whether he needs surgery or not. You're playing Dominic Puny, the guy you just drafted out of Kansas in the 3rd round. He's getting first-team reps right now in training camp. And again, we're still over a month away. A lot of things can change. However, Dibs, I will think you'd at least agree with me if there was a hypothetical absence from regular season games between either Trent or Aiyuk, the Niners would be much better off without Aiyuk versus without Trent.
No doubt. And I will not try to debate that, because it's not debatable. Trent Williams is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's the key to not only your run game in the zone, the outside zone that everyone talks about that they run. Trent Williams, when he gets out in space and you run to his side, and whenever they need yards, they go to Trent's side, and it's outside zone, and Trent either comes in and absorbs 2, or he gets out in space and, chips the defensive end, and then he goes and hunts for the linebacker, and that poor linebacker, when you've got 6'7", 325 coming at you full speed,
steam, yep.
You know that you're about to get pancaked. So, yes, he matters much more to the offense than Brandon Aiyuk. I just think that his deal, his rework, is a lot simpler than Brandon Aiyuk. And so they're trying to work through the Brandon number, the guaranteed number, the fully guaranteed at signing number, the average annual. And when that gets done, you look what you have left in the pie for this year and next year, because you don't want to use all your cap room. they want to carry some of that forward, and they will, because if Aiyuk signs, his cap number this year goes from 14 down to, I don't know, 10 or 12, depending on how they structure the contract. But that number that you free up this year, that can then go to Trent Williams. And you can give Trent more of your cap that you have now. And you can look at next year and say, all right, Trent, we want you back. You want to be here. We're going to give you a nice big chunk next year guaranteed. And then the third year, whatever, we can figure that out down the road. But I do think that the Aiyuk number, whatever that's going to be, that has to take precedence, and then you can figure out what's left for a Trent restructure.
You're definitely right that the Aiyuk contract is way more complex and difficult to work through.
And bigger number, bigger overall number.
Yeah, and, probably going to be longer term, 4 years. I'm not sure that Trent Williams is looking for 4 years. Aiyuk might be 5 years. Who knows? Like, you'll find out. Or maybe you won't find out. Maybe you don't even have to sign him at all. Maybe you don't sign him at all. We'll see. Then I would also ask you if the Trent Williams extension or rework, not an extension, the rework, potentially maybe you tack on a year or whatever it is, if the Trent Williams restructure of his current contract is so simple, I think the obvious question then is why hasn't it happened yet? It's got to be a priority. Is it just as simple as we have to work through Aiyuk first and we're going to put you off to the back burner, Trent? And we're going to cause you to miss training camp. And I know we both agree it's not that big of a deal up to this point that he's missed these first 7 practices. But if it's so simple and you know that you need Trent no matter what, I feel like this is something you could get done maybe even without knowing exactly how the Aiyuk thing is going to work out.
I do think that it's relatively simple, but I also think that you have to do this in a certain order because Brandon Aiyuk is going to command a lot more money, certainly up front. So let's just say that Aiyuk gets done today, and I hope that it is, and he gets 27.5 average annual. He gets 4 years and 110, and maybe he gets $45 million guaranteed at signing. And so you give him a signing bonus of, maybe he gets $30 million signing bonus, just boom, straight off the top. You give him $30 million in cash, and then you realize what you have left to give to Trent Williams. And then you go to Trent and say, all right, you don't have any guaranteed money now, so we're going to take your contract and we're going to give you about $2 million more this year. We're going to fully guarantee this year, and we're going to tack on an extra $4 million next year, and we're going to fully guarantee that year. However you want to structure that, you can give Trent Williams a new contract and a signing bonus, the same thing. And David Lombardi's told us this. If you have a signing bonus, then you can prorate it over the life of the deal. So I do think that Trent is not necessarily easy. But like with Christian McCaffrey, you're not going to give him a ton more. You're just going to give him more guaranteed. You're going to make it so that he feels better about the next couple of 2 years. And then the third and fourth year, we can address that down the road.
The McCaffrey one is, I think, even simpler than Williams because the running back market's pretty barren right now. And making him the highest paid running back in the league, which he is, it's not that difficult to do.
And he already was, right?
He already was, and he stayed. He continued being the highest paid running back in the league.
But they gave him more guaranteed, and they gave him a little bit more up front so that he felt like if he goes out this year and, bad things happen, which, he led the league last year in overall touches.
A little more of a safety net for him now.
Exactly. So now he knows, and same thing with Trent Williams because...
But it's just a little bit more difficult. I mean, again, maybe we're assuming, and maybe we don't know that for sure, but assuming he wants at the very least close to the top of the market, that's a whole lot bigger of a commitment than it was what you committed to McCaffrey because those markets are just so vastly different. The tackle market is exploding, much like the wide receiver market. The running back market has basically never been lower.
Right, but if you look at the tackle market, and I'm looking right now, and he currently is the 6th highest paid in average annual, and he's making $23 million average annual. I don't think that he would look at Tristan Wirfs at 25 and think, I want more than he made. I want more than 28. If you're Trent and you realize you're 36 years old, you probably just want your last 2 years. And I think he signed through 2026. So he's got 3 more years. And really you're looking at get me some guaranteed money for the next 2. And then the third year, if I'm still interested in playing football, we can revisit it then. But for the Niners, you can give him a little bit more upfront in a rework deal. You can give him that guaranteed money. That way, Trent can just go out there and play football. And if something happens to a 36-year-old left tackle, and, being an offensive lineman, you're one misstep or you're one, offensive or defensive lineman falling into you away from bad things happening, you just want to have that guarantee.
Yeah.
being the best in football.
The other thing interesting about the tackle market is you have specifically left tackles. You have right tackles, like Penei Sewell set the market for any tackle earlier. He's making $28 million per year, the right tackle for the Detroit Lions. He's incredible. And maybe in a couple of years, you consider him the best offensive lineman in the NFL. He certainly has that ceiling. Left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, the Vikings was up there 26, but that left tackle market and the overall tackle market was just broken earlier this morning by Tristan Wirfs, who's now making, again, over the course of 5 seasons, $140 million with more than $88 million in total guaranteed in total guaranteed money. And obviously a big part of this is also the full guarantee. And that's what's big in this Brandon Aiyuk conversation as well. What is interesting is you have so many differing opinions on potentially Brandon Aiyuk's, worth, value to the 49ers. For example, you and Mark Willard last week caught up with Aqib Talib. Because remember, he had that comment about Brandon Aiyuk. He's going to explode if he gets a real quarterback. He meant just a real system.
Right.
But he came on to further explain his point, and he said this, Brandon Aiyuk, a top 3 wide receiver.
I don't go off stats. So if you go off the stats, you got to pick the top 3 guys who got the best numbers and say those are the top 3 guys. But me being a cornerback and I guarded a ton of good receivers, I just go off how much problem would this guy present for a defense. And I think Aiyuk is up there, man. He's going to present a lot of problems for anybody who lines up to guard him. He's going to present a lot of problems for him. So if I was creating a team, it'd probably be Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and if Aiyuk ended up my third guy, or if he was my third guy on the board and Aiyuk was there, I'll be just fine with that. So that's kind of what I meant by it.
Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Brandon Aiyuk, the top 3 wide receivers in the NFL. If there's a large enough contingency around the league that feels that way, Aiyuk certainly feels that way. His camp, I'm sure, feels that way. The Niners, once they get him under contract, might feel that way. But when they're in the middle of negotiations, they're probably saying, hey, Brandon, you're closer to like the 6th or 7th best wide receiver in the NFL.
And that's what I was saying to TJ Houshmandzadeh, who is Brandon's personal coach. If I was doing the role play, and I'm the Niners, and I say, well, you were 33rd in the league in catches last year, and TJ didn't even let me finish.
Yards per catch.
All that.
Yards per target.
Exactly. He's number 2 in all those other metrics, and he's 1 or 2 in all the other things. And so just because he doesn't get the
better
ball,
than me,
dude, totally, that's a 4 for your TJ. That high pitched TJ Houshmandzadeh. But I do think that it's going to get worked out, hopefully sooner than later. Because
he ain't better than me.
You look at the schedule, and they've got the Titans in 9 days. Now, do you need Aiyuk to play in that game? No. But you've got joint practices against the Saints, culminating with a game on August 18th, which is, I think it's on a Monday. Yeah, it'd be Friday, Saturday, Monday the 18th. So you do want to maybe have Aiyuk. You'd love to have Trent there for that as well. Joint practices, maybe not the game, but then you start to get closer to September 9th and the opener.
Yeah. And then it starts to, I think the day or the week when it starts really getting real for both of these guys, it's when you have those joint practices with the Saints. Because how many times has Kyle Shanahan and really a lot of NFL head coaches come out and said, preseason games you can kind of do with or without them. It's maybe good to figure out some end of the roster spots, like some of those backup spots and special team spots and who's making the team, the final couple of guys on your roster. But when it comes to getting your guys ready for the regular season, it's a little less about those preseason games and more about that, 4 or 5 day stretch when you just play against in practice for hours at a time, endlessly going after other number ones on different teams that aren't subbing out their starters for their backups into the second quarter of a preseason game.
And that's in 17 days when you play the Saints on August 18th.
So the week leading up to that is important.
Exactly. So really 2 weeks from today would be the Thursday, the 15th, I believe. It's a special day for many people. And so that would be the day that you would target as...
Is that your birthday?
Yeah, it is.
There we go.
Yeah, today's my brother, Mikey 2.0. Turning 62. I had to take a shot at him before I wished him a happy birthday.
So your brother, you, and baby Mai is also all close to each other, right?
And my wife's supper.
Okay.
It's all
big
August
month
is a murderer's
in August.
row, no doubt. So, you're looking at the 18th, but yeah, the 15th would be the joint practices 2 weeks from today. You want Trent, you want Brandon, you want everybody in. That way you can really start to look at what team you're going to be.
Yeah. 888-957-9570. What worries you more right now, Niner fans? We're maybe 2 weeks away from this being a real problem. But which one is more likely to get to that real problem stage? Brandon Aiyuk's hold in, Trent Williams hold out, and maybe are we burying the lead, Dibs? Is the biggest problem or worry of them all Brock Purdy's interceptions?
Oh, boy.
We can get into that on the other side. Give us a call, 888-957-9570. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Willard and Dibs on the free Odyssey app or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And while you're there, check out Matt Barrows' conversation with Bonte and Shasky earlier today on the Morning Roast for all things Niners training camp. We will catch up with Larry Krueger coming up in just a little bit as well to dive into Niners camp from Santa Clara. All right, time for a break. We're back with more on the other side. It's Dibs and Grandi on Willard and Dibs on 95.7 The Game.